Hello and welcome to Holistic Health Divas. Today we have Fee Jameson Folland, and Fee was once before she was in the show, and that was the first time I hosted interview sessions. So we had the privilege of having Fee in the first session, and today I'm so happy to welcome Fee back in our channel. Hello, Fee.
And I'm
Welcome to the
delighted to
channel.
be here. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, it's a pleasure having you back. So, in the last session, Fee spoke to us about her story, her mission, and as we all know, Fee is a lifestyle aligner. And today, Fee is here to talk about the hot topic and something we all really want in life, which is optimal health. So, the topic is optimal health really possible? So, Fee, you've had a lot of experience as a health practitioner. I'm curious to hear where this all come from and what guided you on this path.
Mm. Great question. And like I said earlier, it's a real pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me to be on again, Preeti. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing to help more people access tools, information, ideas to help them on their path, for them or their loved ones. So I really appreciate your vision,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate the way that you're having that be awake and alive in the world. So thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Fee.
you. So my a lot of my kind of my guidance, if you like, in terms of being on this path came from my own experience growing up. And I think that can be true for many of us. At different times in our lives, we'll have an experience that then can be a real eye-opener for us. And then it often becomes part of our path to then pay that forward and tell our story, and others might be able to benefit from that. And so for me, growing up, I covered this a little bit last time in that I grew up in a situation where I actually was quite ill quite a lot of the time. I would catch most of what was, flus, colds, my tummy. My digestion never seemed to be great. My immune system obviously was down and compromised probably quite a lot of the time. My sleeping wasn't that great. I remember I had terrible constipation as a child. I had joint pain. I had asthma that I was recommended to take medication for. I chose not to. And I got chronic sinus congestion all the time, like constantly. I would need to clear my nose all the time. So imagine the impact of that for me with my breathing. I got chronic migraines that would last for about 3 days, and I wouldn't be able to function at all. I'd need very heavy suppository painkillers to try and codeine and whatnot to try and have me get through that time and be able to become pain free. And so that for me, over this time, I'm very grateful that my mum was pretty open to different ways of doing things, not just simply, okay, let's get Fee on different times of medication. She was earnest about wanting to see what else there could be that could be causing a problem, and to talk to the right people, or be inquiring and curious to find out, well, what could be causing that, and see if there anybody who could help. And back then, back in the early 70s in the UK, there really wasn't that much when it comes to alternatives, which, it's funny we call them alternatives. We think about the origin of many of the medicines, the Chinese herbal medicine, Indian medicine, think about some of
Traditional
the Maori
medicine.
medicine, traditional medicines. I don't know that they are alternative. So, however, it was a case of looking at what are some options here besides just medication. And so she did all she could. We looked at allergies. So we kind of looked at could there be any allergies, foods that I was eating. The classic way, the kind of medical model is to test for allergies and scratch tests and whatnot. And we discovered, the classic things like dust mites and whatnot. and animal hair. You know, we grew up in a house with 5 cats and 3 dogs and sheep
Yes,
and
you
guinea pigs
mentioned
and
this
rabbits
before.
and hamsters, you know, you name it. We were exposed to a lot of animals. So that was a bit tricky. But I think my system was just super sensitive, you know, it was very sensitive. And I discovered down the track things like allergies to dairy and gluten, and not so great with the deadly nightshades, and really not that great with grains. And so figuring out what is right for our bodies, I was introduced to that kind of early on, and that kind of that definitely affected and influenced the decisions that I made in terms of, okay, so which strings do I put in my bow when it comes to helping people as a health practitioner? So that was a lot of it, was my own experience, and I'm very grateful to
So,
my mum who was open and feisty enough to keep looking for solutions.
yeah, absolutely. That was quite
Mm.
a health journey you had. And what is the bottom line when it comes to our health?
Well, I think this is a great question, and I think it's something that, certainly for me, you know, my gosh, if I could have found one thing that I could do and that would have solved it,
Magic
be like,
wand.
okay, great, you know, the magic pill, or
Yeah.
you know, do this particular thing. It might be a particular routine change or something. You know, if you exercise for this much time in this particular way, um, and the interesting thing is that something that you and I learned in our integrative nutrition health coaching course is that um, each of us are bio individuals. I call it our unique cellular blueprint. And the thing is, what works for me is it won't necessarily work for you. And so when it comes to our health, and the best way to figure out or the best way to allow ourselves, each of us, to have optimal health, is to find out what that specific recipe is for us as an individual. And a great question to ask ourselves, I believe, in this process, and I certainly have done, because I've, you know, at times in my life with different health challenges I've had, I've kind of thrown my hands up in frustration at times. But it really helps me to re-ask myself the question, if I need to, whose responsibility is it to find the solutions and find the way through the maze to figure out what is my optimal health picture, and what are the pieces of the puzzle that I'm needing. It's not just the pieces of the puzzle, it's how they fit together, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so I've chosen to, well, I invite others to do what I decided to do, which is to fall in love with figuring out what are the pieces to that puzzle, how do they best fit together. And this can become, for me, it's become a big part of my life journey. And so there is not going to be a magic bullet, you know, sad news for some. It was for me. There is not a magic bullet. However, the fabulous thing is that our cells, your cells, my cells, unique, they're not going to have the same needs, but they know what they need to be optimally healthy. And it's a case of us listening. As you know, people ask, when it comes to something like osteopathy, what is it that we're really doing? I truly believe it's a way of listening to someone's body, and to figure out what that our body's telling us. It might be symptoms, it might be preferences, it might be, oh, I have to have that now, and if I don't have it, you know,
Cravings. Yeah.
cravings, right? Um, and you know, when it comes, there are basics that we need, things like, you know, getting enough exercise, optimal hydration, making sure we're getting good nourishment, eating as well as we possibly can, having quality relationships, enjoying the work that we do, sleeping well, living in a clean environment. All of these things are really, really important. Um, what I would say is, the most important thing and the most powerful step that we can take is to listen, is to learn to observe. And it can be something as simple as making a food diary. And so we've got a few things that we can note. What is it that I ate? What is it that I drank? And how did I feel?
A more organized way of knowing. Sometimes we forget, like, what did I eat 2 days ago? I can't remember. So it's
Yeah,
best to
yeah,
keep a
and that's
record of.
understandable.
Yes.
We wouldn't necessarily, and exactly
Right.
like you say, that's where you jot it down. I mean, it might be after a really, really busy day, it might be, what did I have for breakfast today?
Yes.
So knowing thyself, you know, some people say they can remember that really clearly. But when we know, I call it know thyself. It's my pattern is I'm better to jot it down as I go. The best way to do that would be to keep something in the drawer where I've got my knife for cutting food. Because I'm going to go to the drawer to prepare a
Every
meal
time,
to
yes.
get that knife every time, or my apron. So I keep it with that.
Yeah.
But it's starting to become choosing to be a detective so we can figure out the best keys to literally unlock our health. And oftentimes it's little tweaks. It's like sometimes people can remember exactly what it is that they ate because they have the same thing every
Every
day.
single day.
And that doesn't necessarily lead to ideal optimal health for ourselves. So it's great to be able to remember, and is that best for our cell's health? So it's looking at the factors. So say, for example, for me, I'm not great if I have exactly the same thing for dinner every night or for breakfast. I need variation, I need variety anyway, but my body definitely reflects that as well. And these are things that I didn't necessarily notice until I stopped and watched and thought, hang on a minute. My tummy's not feeling that slight little bit edge of irritation now that I'm rotating foods. So I might have a food every 3 days rather than every day, that kind of thing. But a lot of the big challenges that we're seeing, besides kind of figuring out the bigger picture pieces that I've mentioned, is that there are, unfortunately, gaps in our nutrition. And the gaps in our nutrition are not just because we're picky eaters. It's been shown that about over 80 diseases, so 80 diseases, are linked to gaps in our nutrition. In other words, the nutrients are not there in the soil, so the foods that are grown in the soil that we eat, or the
They don't
foods that are
have.
grown, the veggies and plants that are grown, and then the animals eat those, and then we eat the animals, that it's missing. That there are things that are missing in that food chain, if you like. And these have been linked to many of the big killers today. So things like heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, things that affect us and can cripple some. Things like problems with joints, arthritis. They're directly linked to these gaps. And I can remember when I first kind of came across that concept was when I was given 3 years to live unless I took medication every day for the rest of my life. I was 21, and we discovered I'd inherited similar health challenges to my dad, who just died very suddenly at 50. And so one of my lecturers at college, as I was training to be an osteopath, was a medical doctor and medical herbalist. And he explained to me that there's a lot of value in choosing very good nutritional supplements to help fill those gaps, so that, I mean, gosh, medicine saves lives. I have absolutely no question about that. But when it comes to chronic degenerative disease, a lot of value can be found in finding ways to balance the biochemistry of our cells so that they are geniuses and they know how to fix themselves when they get the right reminders and the right micronutrients. And so he kind of introduced me to that concept way back then. That was a couple of years ago, back when I was 21. And it's put me in good stead, and I've never taken that medication. I'm happier and healthier than I was back there when I was 21. I was having all sorts of, depression was something. I would get big patches of feeling so low. I found it very challenging to cope just with daily stuff. And I know I'm not alone, sadly, in that. And it can be the commonest thing to then find oneself if one goes to I hear this so many times. Someone will go to the doctor and say, look, I'm just really finding it challenging to cope. And they'll come out with a prescription for an antidepressant. And whilst there's a place for that, I don't know that it's always, that it's going to necessarily be the answer for long-term solution.
Right.
Finding a symptom of something and then finding a way to stop the body
Stop it.
having
Yes.
that symptom. It's a little bit like the gas in the car, the fuel of the car is running low. So we put a smiley sticker over the gas tank indicator so you can't see the dial anymore. Does that mean the problem's gone away? No, the
Not
car's
at
going to stop.
all. Yeah.
The car is going to stop. And so at times we need that smiley face, but most of the time we actually need to deal with the problem and find a solution for that. So that was my first introduction to that. And it's been an enormous eye-opener because over the last 18 years or so, I've really focused on how that can be a valuable piece in the puzzle for our health. So finding a way to bridge that gap, I call it bridging the gap, so that we eat as well as we can, we do everything else that we need to be doing, and we need to be filling in those micronutrients with the right kind of optimal supplementation, if you like. It's a way to think of it.
Right. So these micronutrients, the powerful ones, where can we start with micronutrients?
Great question. So the most important place to begin is to make sure that we're giving our cells, allowing them to have all the micronutrients, so that it's a little bit like going to a pantry and it's fully stocked in the kitchen. So it's knowing that if you wanted to make a chocolate cake, then you can go and find all the ingredients and be able to make that cake. Otherwise, having a patchy pantry means that you might go there with the intention of making a chocolate cake. You didn't have any chocolate. The cake turns out a bit different, doesn't it? It's not a chocolate cake.
True.
And so it's the same for our bodies. And our bodies, it's this concept of making sure that our pantry stocks it. When our body is experiencing some kind of stress, it might be physical, emotional, mental, whatever it might be, that our body can go to the pantry and take what it needs then and there. It's the concept of making sure that that broad base is covered, that foundation is covered. It's available. And that's another good point, that it is bioavailable, because a lot of, so if you think about classic supplements, ones we might find in the supermarket, at the health food store even, or even in the pharmacy, it's got written on it what is in it, but it does not always have that in it. There's not a law that's consistent across the board that says that what is written on the label has to be in it. And that was a huge eye-opener to me. I was like, you're kidding me. I couldn't believe it. Most of what's available is made to the food grade. So we need to make sure, and we'll talk about that in a second, in terms of making sure that we can get out of it what we need. When it comes to what's kind of the baseline, the question you asked me is that one of the most important challenges that our cells have is to be able to be protected from damage. And we call that damage free radicals. So free radicals are just what's produced when our cells are damaged. And the problem is, when a free radical is produced in our cells, it then goes off and bangs against other cells and produces more damage. So free radicals create more free radicals. It becomes this chain of destruction. And this is at the root cause of things like inflammation. And inflammation is behind pretty much every disease process that we know. So it's the cellular damage that we want to reduce, because when we do that, it means that the body's ability and capacity to put those pieces of the puzzle together and to allow that optimal health situation.
So that is where we start from. Taking care of ourselves.
That is where we come from. Taking care of ourselves, and particular protection. Yes, we need to have the nutrients there. So it's a little bit like, imagine yourself standing with your feet in the soil. And if you think about it this way, if we take, say, we get the goodies that we need in our food, ideally. If we are going to be getting our antioxidants, so if I just quickly explain antioxidants, it's a word that many of us know, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty of it, a way to think about it is an antioxidant is if you take an apple and you slice the apple and you kind of leave it on the side, what happens to the surface of it?
It turns brown.
It turns brown. That's normal and natural, isn't it? Yeah, it's been happening since the beginning of time. That is a free radical damage, and it's oxidizing the surface of the apple. Now, that same process is going on our skin, like our little sunspots, or it goes on, that's on the outside, but it's also going on the inside. So things like our joints. So what do we call it when that damage is going on in our joint?
Yeah.
What happens when it happens in our heart?
It's heart disease.
Heart disease. In our liver.
Liver dysfunction.
Yeah, liver disease, cirrhosis maybe. And so it's that process basically that's going on in our bodies. So what happens if we take that apple that we've just sliced open and we take a fresh lemon and we rub it on the surface of the apple? What happens then?
So the color remains intact.
Very good point. It will go brown, but it won't go as brown, and it will go slower because the lemon is an antioxidant.
Yes.
Right. And so this is all about making sure we find the right lemon juice for the outside and the inside of our body. That's what this is all about. Yes, we need the nutrients, but we also need those factors that help us protect ourselves from that browning of the apple kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, when we eat fruits and veggies, they have these antioxidants in them, like the lemon juice, which is great. When we have supplements, they have some of them in them, which is great. Now, the challenge is that when we eat one of these antioxidants, it has the ability to kill or neutralize one of those free radicals that's causing this damage on the apple. Now, would you say that most people are feeling more stress these days or less stress than my grandparents' day?
Super stressed.
Right, especially at the moment. Over this last year, since COVID times, March 2020, things have changed, right?
Yes.
And so people are feeling more stress, so that more of this damage is being created. And would you say that people are taking more time to chew their food, make really nutritious meals, especially when they're stressed, and be very careful about the choices of foods that they're making?
I don't think so.
No! So we've got this scenario where lots more damage and less goodies. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing this huge link to degenerative disease, people dying,
Yeah.
And so the problem with going for food as being the only solution and these classic supplements that we find is that they can only have one antioxidant that will neutralize one free radical. Now, here's the magic, and this is what when we can harness this, we are really, really doing well, which is that Preeti cells know exactly how to actually make your own antioxidants. So do mine. And they're unique. It's based on our DNA. Every time your body makes one antioxidant, it has the ability to neutralize or kill between 100 and 1,000 of those bad guys. Not one. So what would you rather be doing? Would you rather be trying to get it from supplements or food, or would you rather be making it yourself?
I'd rather go in for powerful supplements
You'd
along with
rather
food.
be that can help your cells to make their own.
Yes.
Because remember,
Absolutely.
yours that your body makes are way more powerful than what you can find in
Right.
the bottle. So what we need to go for, as I've discovered over these years, is going for something that could give me the right micronutrients, but help my cells and remind my cells to be making their own antioxidants.
Yes.
That's where the genius lies. And that's unique.
Okay.
It's very unusual to find that, but that's one thing we want. And the other
Right.
thing are the right omegas, the right fats.
Yeah.
And these are so important for all of the membranes of our cells, for our joints, for our brain,
Brain
for our
function.
skin,
Yes.
and so kind of those basic, and then we can get more specific. It might be eye health. We might be wanting to look for specific nutrients for our eye health, or it might be for our joints, or it might be for our liver. But those are the basics, making sure that our pantry is stocked, our cells are getting what they need to make their own antioxidants, and then we need the right fats and then specifics based on particular need, which would be unique from person to person.
Perfect. So when it comes to these micronutrients, so what do we look for?
Mm, great question. So I've already kind of alluded to it in terms of a lot of what is
You did
available.
mention a bit. Yes.
Yeah,
You did mention
and
that.
you mentioned a bit too. So a lot of what is available is made to food grade. So having our radar up right away for the quality, the standard of what we're choosing, what we're taking, what it's made to, and we're aiming for something that is BP or pharmaceutical grade. And the thing with that is that it's made to the same standard that a drug is made to, but it's not a drug. And so that way we can trust it for us to be using for ourselves and our loved ones. And, as practitioners, it's something that means that we can actually be comfortable and feel authentic and integrous about recommending, because I'll only recommend something that I know I value. So there's that's the first thing, is making sure that it is made to a very high standard that we can absolutely trust. So it's just the same as penicillin. There needs to be a worldwide standard that is made to, as opposed to if food grade, which would be if you wanted to have a pizza, you might go, or even a prawn curry, you might go to one place that gives you this many prawns, and you go to this place that gives you a different number. That's not a standard, right? and different spices and different amounts of fat. But when it comes to our health, and it's something that we're using to help our health in a very fundamental way. And like for me, I wanted to not begin to take that medication. I needed something that I knew I could rely on and would be consistent from tablet to tablet. It's pharmaceutical grade. So that's the first thing. And that was an eye-opener for me. I did not realize that.
Yeah, because there's plenty that's available in the market, and it can be pretty confusing. So you need to sort of know like what you're looking for. Very specific.
That's so important. Another one, because there are several different factors we need to bear in mind here, is that it's actually being produced by a research company. So it's a company that is thinking about not just this looks good, I think this should be okay, it should work. They're testing it constantly, and they've been doing that for a long time. So they've got that experience, research, and results behind them. So, and they're being actually, human cells are being experimented on. This is not happening to rats or guinea pigs. You know, I understand that there's a place for that, but it's tested on humans, and it's been shown through lots and lots of research that it's producing results. We need to see what is it actually doing, rather than, well, it looks good, I hope so. You know, that's been one thing that's been quite a shocker for me, is that there can be kind of big names where if we Google returns from, it might be your favorite supplement company, and you might Google that name and returns, product recalls, where accidentally, you know, iron filings have been found in products. If that's going to a young person or someone who's older, that could have big effects, drastic effects. Some were found with salmonella, traces of salmonella in them, because oops, they're made to the same standard that the curry's made to, or pizza's made to. So that's really important. Ideally going for something, a company that's making them, that is focused on research, that do all of their own testing of the ingredients. So it can say that all the paperwork can look really good when it arrives at the door of the manufacturer, and it says that it's organic, that it's et cetera, but it could have been contaminated en route, or the tests that were done back there in the other state or a country aren't consistent with the standards of the place that's going to make it. And so that's really important, is making sure that independent analyses are done to decide whether to accept that raw ingredient or not. And therefore it can often be better than organic standard, because it's been independently tested. So that's important. What are the ingredients that have gone into it, and making sure it's been tested to find out that what we're taking actually disintegrates in our cells after a certain period of time. So in other words, say, for example, it will have dissolved in our stomach within 20 minutes, that it's got the right potency in it, that every one is going to hit the mark, so every tablet is tested, and that it can be absorbed. That's something that you talked about.
Every tablet is tested.
Absolutely. Everything is tested. Wow. And it has to. If something is going to be if something is going to be passing pharmaceutical grade, at any time, in any moment, any tablet can be tested, and it's the same.
Right.
It's mind-blowing. And it needs to be guaranteed. So the company would need to back it themselves as well. Not just some kind of, you know, if somebody's bought something, they have a consumer guarantee. This is guaranteed by the company. So those would be some main things. And many companies will tick quite a few of those boxes, but not all of them.
Right. Okay, so that's pretty amazing information. So where do we go next? What is next?
Good question. Well, when it comes to, you know, we talked about a broad-based umbrella when it comes to optimal health. And, you know, one of the things that I'm constantly encouraged by, inspired by, and has me, excited, is what the capacity that our bodies have to fix themselves. Right. They know what to do, and most of the times we are just getting in the way. and so when we get in the way consistently enough and don't listen to what our bodies need, things start to break down. And the classic things that can break down are our immune system, our sleep, our digestion,
Gut
Classic
health.
things. Things
Yes.
like gut health, things like
Yes,
chronic constipation is horribly common.
it is.
Reflux, very, very common. Just simply not really being able to digest our food is really common. And these would be kind of the main, and things like being able to find a way to work our way through stress, being with stress. Stress is a part of life. People say, how do I stop stress? Well, you're going to that means how do I die? Because there's always going to be stress in our lives.
Yeah,
It's more about
absolutely.
how we respond to it.
How do you
But these
deal
are
with
things.
it? How do you cope up
So
with it? Yes.
exactly. So when I've got enough reserves in my tanks, then I'm generally able to be resourceful and handle more of these things. But when the health of my cells is running low, then
Right.
these are the classic areas that can be impacted. And so in terms of what's next, well, gosh, the world's our oyster. But I get the sense that maybe your listeners, Preeti, might benefit from something specific that we might offer based around what is it that we can do to help our sleep patterns, or it might be some top tips around our immune system, or it
Right.
might be so it would be a case of finding out what would be most interesting to your listeners, and then perhaps what we can do is cover off
That topic.
specifically
Yes.
that topic and find
Right.
out what is most popular and then cover that first. But
Yes.
I and that way we can kind of hone in on specific key
Right.
pointers for that area of our health, including ideal optimal micronutrition too.
Perfect. So, Fee, thank you for today. And it was super interesting what you shared with us. And I'm really happy really happy that Fee is going to be continuing with us for one more session where you can choose the topic, like she mentioned just now. You can choose what you want to learn more about, what you want to know more about. So you could just mention that below in the comments or leave a message on our Instagram. It's Fee Jamieson Folland and Rising on My Own, right, on Instagram. So just send us a message like what would you like to know more about. And I will be very soon conducting kind of asking questions or a poll on what is your interest. So
Great.
probably like you can come and write down over there so that we know what many people are interested in knowing about. And that will be the topic for the next session from Fee. So that's going to be super interesting because that is all you wanted to know. So join us soon and thank you. Namaste for today.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's fabulous to connect with you. It always is, Pretty. It's magic.
Absolutely. Same here. Same here. So see you soon. And please do subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Thank you.
Awesome. Ciao.